You are Locked On Wolves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
T-Wolves rally comes up short tonight. They dropped their fourth in a row. That's right, fourth in a row. They didn't do that once all last year. Final score tonight versus the Kings, 115-104. What's going on? Back in the lab, back at it. Another T-Wolves POSTCAST episode right here, Locked On Sports Minnesota Network. Your team every day. Jack Borman with me as always. Give him a follow if you haven't already, by the way, at JRBorman13. Plenty to break down tonight and discuss, including the Wolves getting dominated in the paint, plus Nickeil Alexander-Walker's big scoring night. But first, quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by Game Time. Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, man, Wolves trying to snap this three-game losing streak. They're playing in a back-to-back, obviously. Third matchup with the Kings already, who we know firsthand can give this Wolves team some fits. Back and forth game, man. It was a fun game. If you're not being biased and just a fan of good basketball, it was a good game. Kings' largest lead was 14. Wolves' largest lead was 12. We were tied 4 times. 4 other lead changes in this game. Wolves dominated the third quarter. They got all the momentum back and the early part of the fourth quarter as well. But then, Jack, again, you got to play the entire fourth quarter in the NBA. That's just the rules, all right? And that's just when things really fell apart, right? Up 12 with 7 minutes left, I want to say. Why don't you just start there, actually, because they got outscored 34-18 when it really mattered most, right? In crunch time. And once again, we just saw this Wolves team kind of unravel at critical junctures, right? Pivotal moments. So your fourth quarter thoughts and why you think this team's just kind of unable to put some good teams away this season when it matters most.
Yeah, I'd like to apologize to anybody that watched the Minnesota basketball party this morning. I thought the Wolves were going to go 3-0 with the rest of this homestand. I really thought that they found a little bit more of a formula last night that could have worked. And then, Mike Conley comes back tonight. I don't think we were necessarily expecting that he would be back this soon, but boy, was it good to have Mike. Was tremendous for the most part in his return. He had 16 points, 4 assists, 3 big 3-pointers in the second half. Also drew that 3-point foul that made those free throws was tremendous. But yeah, I mean, a very similar script to last night in that you have a god awful second quarter. Just so bad, just so hard to watch. The fans are audibly groaning, booing the team off the floor. Julius Randle was doing things that made fans just want to scream for the most part of that second quarter. And the Timberwolves had more turnovers than points for the first, more turnovers than field goals made for the first 11 minutes of that quarter until that bank shot evened it up. And then like you said, really awesome third quarter, and then the fourth quarter just really get stuck in the mud. I think for the fourth quarter, what really stood out to me initially was that Domantas Sabonis went out, picked up his 5th foul halfway through the third quarter.
Yeah.
Timberwolves were down 7. And then he came back in with 10 minutes left, and the Wolves were up 8. So they won those, 7.5 minutes by 15 points. He checks back in. Kings go on an immediate 5-0 run. And then Ant comes back in after Finch calls a timeout, gets a 3-ball for Mike Conley. You're thinking, all right, we've studied the ship. Like, we're going to be all right. Like, this is kind of like what the Wolves of last year looked like. We had a third quarter where they looked like they, we'll get into the third quarter a little bit more, but certainly looked like they had the most pride that they had taken on the defensive end of the floor,
Yep.
Maybe any quarter all year.
Yeah.
In that third quarter, so you're like, all right, we're getting some vibes of like last year's Wolves. This is great. Mike's making threes. Ant's, get Mike involved. This is awesome. And fast forward, they're up 12 with 7:17 left. To that point, you've played 17 minutes in the second half. The Kings had scored 17 points in those 17 minutes. That's tremendous defense. That's so hard to do defensively in today's NBA, especially after Wolves defense was just hemorrhaging points in the second quarter. So it was a great job of the Wolves defense. Clearly, after Chris Finch just went after him in the locker room, you could just tell the way they came out in the second half. They had a different energy to them. And then the Kings go on a 16-4 run in a little more than 3 minutes, right? So it's just the Kings are so explosive and they're so hard to keep down.
They're so good. When they're on, they're on.
And their backcourt is just electric. We saw Malik Monk score 7 of those 16 points, absolutely fried Nickeil Alexander-Walker off the dribble. And there's not a whole lot Nickeil can do. Like he's playing his best defense that he can do. I thought the Wolves maybe switched to having Jaden McDaniels guard Malik Monk a little too late. And then when Nickeil Alexander-Walker exited the game, Mike Conley was guarding De'Aaron Fox, who, of course, made a couple of 3-pointers. And what was unfortunate for the Wolves is that three that Fox hit to go ahead was off an offensive rebound. And that was something that the Wolves got killed on in the first half and did a much, much better job in that third quarter of rebounding the ball and not preventing those second chance opportunities. And so that was just kind of a killer that, again, much like last night, a lot of the same issues that they had in the early part of the game kind of reemerged in that fourth quarter. And then you compound that with the Timberwolves going about 3 minutes without a field goal after Mike Conley checked out around the 5-minute mark, to kind of get his wind. And then once Mike kind of came in, it was just too late, right? The offense at that point was just completely out of rhythm. It was too much Ant and Julius just kind of looking at each other and trading off, having these horrible isolation possessions that just didn't even really yield many good shot opportunities, which is obviously super unfortunate. The Timberwolves in the fourth quarter, 7 of 21, turned it over 4 times after Nickeil Alexander-Walker's corner 3 early in the fourth. Just 6 of 18 overall, 1 of 9 from 3 from there on in over the final 11 minutes or so. But I just think at the heart of all the issues that the Wolves had in the fourth quarter was just their interior defense. The Kings were 6 of 7 for 12 points in the paint. The Timberwolves in this game allowed 44 points in the paint in the first half. That ties for the second most points in the paint allowed of any team in the NBA in any half this season. So pretty horrible. And again, just to kind of contextualize like how crazy that was. The Kings averaged 47 points in the paint per game, and they got 44 in the first half. And then overall in the night, Kings had 35 shot attempts within 4 feet of the basket at the rim. The Wolves just had 17, so got doubled up there. And the Kings made 25 shots at the rim. Wolves only made 11. So when you're getting beat up that badly at the rim and inside, it's just hard to. It's just really hard to win a basketball game. And then the Kings had 22 second chance opportunities between offensive rebounds and then balls off of their missed shots that went out of bounds. And with Sacremento ball, they had 18 second chance points. So just really, really tough for the Timberwolves to win games like that. And pretty incredible that they were in the driver's seat in the fourth quarter, despite all of that. It's just so frustrating too that, at the first sight of like, all right, maybe we're digging out of this hole.
Mm-hmm.
It just all kind of comes crashing down, and maybe we can get into what did go well a little bit and
well, yeah. Let me ask you this. I mean, what's the biggest common denominators in these 4 straight losses? But also, what are you encouraged by? Because I know there are some positives here to take away, despite yet another loss, which obviously starts to get pretty demoralizing one after the other like this.
Yeah, I think common denominator for me is just like their first halves have been pretty poor, and they've dug themselves these holes that have just been really difficult for them to get out of. And I think their offense has gone, just really stagnant and out of rhythm for extended stretches of time. And I think, again, it's just unfortunate. Like Ant tonight had 24 points in the first half, was seemingly the only guy besides Nickeil Alexander-Walker who could do anything in the first half offensively. Then only has 5 points in the second half, finishes with 29 points on 24 shots is not great. He's only 5 of 15 on shots inside the 3-point line tonight. So I think it's just a lack of consistent offense. And again, like I would love to say like, hey, Rob Dillingham, didn't play, and that's the reason why the offense didn't look great. But hey, like when Rob Dillingham was in the game, the offense wasn't great. He turned the ball over on his first 2 on the first possession of each of his stints, each of his 3-minute stints in the first half. Just didn't look like he had a whole lot of juice tonight after having a ton last night. So again, I think that's kind of what Chris Finch is alluding to, that that's probably what you're going to get 1 out of every 4 games. You're probably going to get last night 1 out of every 4 games, tonight 1 out of every 4 games, and then something in between those 2 in the other 2. So again, I just think it's too many tough first halves and then prolonged stretches of just not being able to score the ball and not being able to get into clean and crisp actions that can get you good shot attempts, especially late in games. And that's something that you'd hope that Mike Conley coming back can help with. And we certainly saw that for stretches in the first quarter and in the third quarter. And then at the start of the fourth quarter, obviously. But, it's just unfortunate that the Timberwolves still look like they're pretty unsure of how they want to structure the rotation. We can get into that a little bit too later.
Well, just real quick, because I know last night we talked about, Finch's basically choice, I guess, to not play Naz Reid at the end of that game or going into overtime. And then tonight, no Naz to close most of the fourth. I know there's a comment in here. I'll try to find it real quick. But just your thoughts on that, or maybe even Nah have that hot hand for a while. I know you said he cooled down later, but what were your thoughts on the rotation? And clearly, is this just still a work in progress kind of thing that it's up to Finch to put the puzzle pieces together the way he best sees fit? And clearly it's going to take time with all these new pieces, or is it something more on Finch's end? Because I know, you stuck up for Finch quite a bit last night, which made a lot of sense the way you broke it down.
Yeah. And I think I was sticking up mostly for Chris Finch in that, the players really trust him, and he really, does an excellent job of cultivating relationships with his players, and everyone believes in Chris Finch. I think, there's nobody that's not rowing in the Chris Finch boat. It's mostly just I think tonight, getting away from Naz Reid and going back to Julius Randle defensively in the fourth quarter, it is tough. Randle again was tremendous in most of the third quarter in the early part, in the early part of the fourth quarter. I just think, it's tough because you're trying to ride the hot hand in a sense. And, I feel like Chris Finch is almost kind of riding the hot hand, a little too much. And then,
sure. Yeah.
Or I guess it's just kind of
more on
like
feel and
Vegas,
momentum.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you're in Vegas, right? You're winning money at the table. You don't really know, should I stay at the table? Am I going to keep winning?
Black has hit 9 times in a row. It's got to hit again, right?
Yeah. It's just trying to figure out okay, when do I leave the table and kind of go cash my chips in versus do I stay here and try to keep it rolling? And I just think that right now, what's unfortunate for Chris Finch is that these players, outside of Anthony Edwards for the most part, are waxing and waning so much in their individual single game to game performance. And it's so difficult to kind of ride the hot hand and structure these rotations when that's happening and you're getting a different result almost every single night in terms of who's playing well and who's not. And a lot of times too, the guys who are playing well don't necessarily fit in lineups together. Like tonight, you have Julius Randle, plays really well in the second half, and Mike Conley was playing really well for extended stretches in the second half as well. But it's just kind of tough when you want Mike Conley out there to be organizing things, and you want Randle to be able to be kind of this high post playmaker.
Yeah.
And the two just haven't kind of found that synergy of who should have the ball at what times. And then you're also trying to work in Ant having the ball and having these isolation possessions. So I just think, it's just tough with, having another ball stopper out there when you're trying to, move the ball around a little bit more and trying to also figure out and suss out, should I close with Nah? Should I close with Julius? Should I close with Nah? Should I close with Mike? How long should you let Mike go in the early part of the fourth quarter before Nikhil comes back in and then you put Mike back? It's just,
is there too many options? Is there too? I mean, we love the depth coming in because it's it's a long season. Of course, a guy or two is going to get dinged up. It's great to have all this depth. Is there too many options right now for Finch?
I wouldn't say there's too many options. I would just say it's harder for him to push the buttons when his players have been so inconsistent from game to game.
That makes sense as well. Yeah, that makes sense.
And certain lineup combinations too from game to game are fluctuating wildly. And so I think then, when the lineups aren't playing well, but they played well the night before, it looks like, hey, Finch, what are you doing, man? But on some level, players just have to play a little bit more consistently. And I agree with that comment that's up there right now. I think, the chemistry, I think, and the vibes of the team are off. in a major way right now, because on paper, the team is not a whole lot different than what we saw last season. And the way that they're trying to play is not a whole lot different from last season. I just think that the connectivity of this team on and off the floor is just not what it was last season. And I think that when you kind of have that intangible last season, you can kind of get a team that plays greater than the sum of its parts. And when you don't have that intangible, at least so far this season, you get a team that is certainly playing to a level less than the sum of its parts.
Let me ask you this just real quick on that point. I know we got to move on to segment 2, but do they miss a guy, almost a coach on the court like Slow-Mo and that veteran presence? There's veterans out on the court, but for some reason, to your point, there's just missing some sort of chemistry and things that, you know, I know Mike Conley hasn't played as much this year as well. He's been a glue on the court as well. But, like, are they missing guys like that with the IQ, the basketball IQ and things like that, just to keep everybody in check once in a while?
100%. I mean, you know me, brother. I mean, yeah. I was the leader of the Slow-Mo train last year and 2 years ago, but I just think that, like, Kyle does such a great job of getting things organized and knowing what to call and putting guys in the right spots. And he's a legitimate point guard. You know, Nikhil, Dante are not legitimate point guards. Like, Kyle at 6'9" was a legitimate point guard, was a guy who could play make out of the post, play make on the drive, run pick and roll, get the ball to Rudy, kick the ball out. You know, it was tough to just pressure him because he's 6'9" and can just throw it over the top of the defense. So I think they really miss Kyle Anderson as the kind of leader and the point guard when Mike Conley's not on the floor. But those two also fit really well together because I think, you know, Kyle's just much more of a, you know, super selfless playmaker than Julius Randle is at the 4 spot. And so I think it's a little bit harder for guys to play off of Randle right now when he's holding the ball a little longer than I think he was earlier in the season. I think earlier in the season, he was driving a little bit more decisively against spread floors and kicking the ball out much better. I think that Timberwolves spacing hasn't been as good without Mike. And so I think that's led to a little bit more congestion. Julius turning the ball over a little bit more, not being able to play make quite as cleanly. And I think obviously, you know, those are areas that Kyle Anderson was really successful in throughout his Timberwolves tenure. So, and I agree with that last comment too. Like, I definitely think that Julius Randle fits better when Ant is not on the floor, or at least like when he's playing alongside Naz Reid, and there's a little bit more spacing out there, like we saw in the back half of that third quarter. But
let's keep the Julius Randle convo going. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode brought to us by FanDuel. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Right now, FanDuel's giving you a chance at a huge return, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. When you get the hunch in the middle of the game, you can go check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. Again, $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 bet. Go check it all out over at FanDuel.com. Get in on some NBA future action while you're there. Anthony Edwards, MVP odds. It's dropping a little bit, still at 12-1. Still feel like that's some good value. It's all sitting up over at FanDuel.com. Again, check it all out over at FanDuel.com and get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you win your first $5 wager. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook and official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Okay, Julius Randle was blank tonight. I mean, for me, roller coaster, atrocious second quarter, like you said, but, you know, got some bully ball action in there, ends with 21 points, 9 rebounds. But just talk to me about him tonight, I guess, but like big picture. I know you've already touched on some of this, but he clearly is such an atopic and focal point here with some of their struggles. What's your biggest love-hate with Julius Randle through these 18 games? Like, you love blank about him, and then something that's just really grinding your gears right now with him that's holding this team back.
Yeah, I love the physicality that he plays with inside on the offensive end. I think that really gives energy to his teammates and helps draw a lot of fouls and helps get the Wolves in the bonus. And certainly every team in the NBA has a higher offensive rating when they're in the bonus than when they're not. So I think that is certainly valuable, and he draws a lot of non-shooting fouls as well, which is super important. And early in the year, he did an excellent job of, creating off the dribble and creating open 3-point shots. Like, I think Julius Randle's playmaking was a huge part of why the Timberwolves were able to, shoot more 3-pointers and obviously knock them down at a super high rate the early part of the season. But, I think what's really frustrating to me is you see how he played in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And he was flying around. He was busting his rear end on defense. He, had that overzealous foul on Fox reaching in midway through the third quarter when they're on this huge run. But, he's giving effort and he's fighting on the glass. He's paying attention. He's making these rotations. And it's just like, man, why can you not bring that more often? Especially when you've got Naz Reid playing behind, literally the best possible player to come in behind you, maybe in the entire league, to fill your role, knowing that if you go out there and you just play your tail off for, 8 minutes or even less than that, maybe even 5 minutes or 6 minutes, like you can just go to Naz Reid. Like that's what's so frustrating to me, because he's proven that he can do it and he chooses not to. So I think that's what's been frustrating. And I think a perfect encapsulation of how the fan base feels about Julius Randle right now came in that second quarter. There's a clip I retweeted on my Twitter page. If you scroll back a little ways, Naz Reid sprinted all the way across the court to block a corner 3-point shot. Julius Randle gets the rebound and then super lazily throws this outlet pass up the floor that De'Aaron Fox intercepts, dunks, and then we have the basket malfunction because he dunked so hard. And that's just like, man, your teammates are busting their tails, and then you go and just make a super lazy, unengaged play like that. And the crowd was, booing pretty vociferously after that. And the Boo Birds really followed them into the halftime break.
Yeah. And
so I think for him, it's, again, in the first half and in the fourth quarter, he just sucked all the rhythm out of the offense. And he's such a talented player. And you saw that for stretches in the third quarter, the way he's able to score in the mid-range and isolation, and add that edge and physicality inside on both ends of the floor, frankly. And then when it just goes away, it really goes away, like just a total pendulum swing. So I think we just need more consistency. And I think the more that you can, I guess, get him to buy into bringing that energy defensively, the better off the team is going to be. But sure feels like there's just an intangible issue there that I think is
some sort of human element going on that's tough to kind of put onto paper.
Is permeating the team. And I think it stems from situations like that.
Yeah,
frankly. Yeah. And it makes you wonder, just, is he going to survive the trade deadline? I think it's kind of already fair to start asking that question.
What does that look like, by the way? What could that possibly look like? Can you trade him?
I'm not going to
now. Is that just as far as like, just as far as
they have to wait, I believe, until either December 15th or January 15th, one of the two, until you can start doing anything. But
somebody said like it can only be a player for player trade with even money. Like, I don't even know the logistics, I guess, but again, probably too soon to cross that bridge.
Yeah, basically, if you're going to do it, you want to get under the second apron. So, but at any rate, like, I just think that sequence was really telling.
For sure. That's a prime
and
example.
Is a good kind of an encapsulation of it, because in the third quarter, I mean, it is really crazy that he was a big part of that energy shift in the third quarter. I mean, he was on the court for, when that energy really started to shift. He was on the court, and then Rudy came back in for the final 2 minutes and change. So for the first really 3.5, 4 minutes of that run that they won, I'm like, Randle was in there and he was a big part of it. I mean, he was getting contested defensive rebounds. He was scoring inside. He was letting the crowd know about it. He was getting deflections. He was forcing turnovers. He's, screaming into the cameras, firing everybody up. I mean, the Wolves had 5 stocks in the frame, held Sacramento to 4 field goals made, 5 turnovers, had a ton of deflections, probably had more deflections in that quarter than any other quarter this season, held the Kings to 5 of 18 shooting. And then in the fourth quarter, I mean, it's just absurd. In the fourth quarter, they shoot 13 of 22, score 34. Like, it's just the swings that you get are maddening. And I think that is somewhat emblematic of Julius Randle. And that certainly seems to be the case based on, people I talk to who cover the Knicks, who have, certainly given the book on Julius Randle and Dante DiVincenzo. So
100%. A lot of good takes, a lot of good breakdowns, plenty of more games, and plenty of a long season, obviously, to continue these discussions. We got a couple minutes left. We got to talk about this Clippers game Friday night. That's all coming up right after this. Quick reminder, tonight's episode also brought to us by BetterHelp. When your schedule it's packed with work projects and more, so easy to let your priorities start to slip, even when we know what makes us happy. But when you feel like you got no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy, they're more important than ever. If you've been thinking about starting therapy, it's time to give BetterHelp a try. Entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So simple. All you got to do, fill out a brief questionnaire. You get matched up with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Go visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon. You're getting 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, no rest for the wicked in the West, huh? Clippers up next. Harden just goes off for 44. Just top 2 or 3 things we should know about the Clippers themselves, and then this matchup, how this one might play out. What are you looking for?
Yeah, but before we get to this, I just want to highlight something that I'm seeing coming across the wire on Twitter that is happening just down the hall from me. So Anthony Edwards, this is from Chris Hine on Twitter, said, quote, "Y'all want to talk to me? What, you want to know why we're trash?" And he proceeded to say that the Wolves, including himself, are a bunch of front runners right now. Chris also says that Ant said that he felt like he feels as though the team has been growing apart, that they can't talk to each other anymore. Ant says that it's everyone. He's not singling out the newbies. Says everyone has their own agendas right now. So, that is certainly a pretty damning indictment of where this team is at right now. And I think the comment, we made earlier just about the vibe of the team, and you can see it, in the arena when you're there. It really stands out a lot more than when you're watching on TV. And 84 Goat in the comments is exactly right. The schedule only gets more difficult. So, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this team comes together. And I think that's certainly areas where they miss Karl Anthony Towns and especially Kyle Anderson. Mm-hmm. Both those guys were super tight with everybody in the locker room, were really well respected inside the locker room as people. And I think that the team last year had like a superpower that was just unbelievable camaraderie amongst each other. Yeah. And the vibe in the locker room, win, lose, or draw, was always positive, upbeat, connected. And it's just not that.
So this feels like, and this happens all the time in every sport, but this feels like kind of a turning point, and this could go either way. This could either rally everybody together, or this could start to kind of unravel even more so than it already is, which even just saying that out loud, as bad as it's been, would absolutely be, obviously worst case scenario. If you had to guess which way, knowing those players in the locker room, again, you're at the Target Center more nights than not. You've seen these guys up close and personal. You know the human element to a lot of these guys. Granted, there's some newbies. Is this going to get worse before it gets better right now? I mean, is that just the gut vibe? Just where we're at right now?
It's hard to tell, frankly. I mean, I was sitting here 24 hours ago talking to you about why I thought last night was going to be a turning point. I know because the vibe, the most important thing was the vibe was better. Mm-hmm. And tonight, again, in the third quarter, early fourth quarter, the vibe was there. And so that's why I think a loss like this is so soul crushing. And yeah, it's tough to know what buttons there are even to press right now. I'm not going to, guess and make up something about, what's going on in the locker room and, why the team isn't tight or what they can do from here. I think they just have to show us with their play. And I think, again, that starts on Friday. It's a good thing they're home. They're home Friday. Hopefully they can, maybe enjoy some time off with their families tomorrow, and and just kind of clear your head, regroup, and come back ready to go on Friday.
Home Friday, home Monday too against the Lakers as well. 2 more at home.
Yeah, but to answer your question about the Clippers,
yeah.
I've actually watched a decent amount of the Clippers this year because they've been a fun team to watch. I love the wall that they've got at the Intuit Dome, which is an incredible new arena.
Super
for,
cool.
the Clippers there across from SoFi. And Harden tonight had 43 points. He was absolutely tremendous. He went absolutely nuclear in the pick and roll in the first quarter. Was awesome there. And Ivica Zubac has been awesome for them as a drop big. Is totally anchored them in a way that we're used to seeing Rudy Gobert anchor teams. They're fifth in defense right now, in large part because they're first in defensive rebound percentage. A lot of that has to do with Zubac. And they're excellent at taking away shots at the rim and in the corners, which obviously is what the purpose of drop coverage is what you want to try to limit those 2 shots, the most efficient shots in the NBA. So again, I don't know if Norman Powell is going to play. I think he was upgraded to questionable. He has had a hamstring strain.
Okay.
So maybe that means that he will play Friday if he was upgraded to questionable today. I think a lot of NBA teams generally follow that pattern of an upgraded questionable, maybe doesn't play and then plays the next game. So we'll see. Amir Coffey has been playing bigger minutes for them. Hopkins high school grad, went to Minnesota.
Gophers, baby.
So it'll be fun to see him back home. But the Clippers just have a lot of guys in the wing that can play on both ends of the floor. And obviously when James Harden's cooking, he still has prime James Harden shot making ability in him. I don't think the athleticism is there quite as much anymore, but he's certainly still extremely powerful as a scorer, getting downhill into the paint. And Zubac obviously, has been tremendous for them as well. So I think it'll be a good opportunity for the Timberwolves bench, to make another good impact and be able to win those minutes. And I think, if Rudy Gobert finds a way to, outplay Zubac, I think Anthony Edwards can outplay James Harden. I think the Wolves have a good chance at winning the game. Obviously, there's a lot of things that have to happen outside of that. But, there's not a whole lot of things that the Clippers do really well that the Wolves struggle with. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think, whether or not the Wolves will be able to score in the half court efficiently will tell a lot. And I think if the Wolves are able to score a little bit more efficiently in the half court, kind of like they did in the first quarter tonight, and for stretches in the third quarter, and the Clippers aren't, playing off of stops and getting into transition and semi-transition and making it tough on the Wolves defense. I think that it should be a really competitive game, but I just on paper, the Clippers are not a better basketball team right now than the Timberwolves. But again, that's where all these other intangibles come in of, you've got a player right now who very clearly has the yips in Dante DiVincenzo. You have another guy who probably is feeling that the fan base is turning on him and that, things aren't going great with Julius Randle. And, and then the rest of the guys are probably looking around like, damn, why is this thing the way it is now versus last year when, the 6-7 of us are all still in the rotation and we can't bring what we had last year. So, but again, Timberwolves 0-4 with Mike Conley out of the lineup, and they are 8-6 with Mike Conley in the lineup. So, hopefully Mike is able to play again on Friday and bring the same level of, shot making. And I think he stimulated a lot of good ball movement as well offensively in the starting lineup groups in the first quarter, third quarter, early part of the fourth quarter as well. So that'll be really important to them. I just think, again, another thing, one more thing before we go, the Timberwolves just need more from Jaden McDaniels, point blank. I kind of gave him a pass last night because I thought he did so many other things well last night besides missing a couple of corner threes. With the way that he was corner crashing and engaged, he was tremendous defensively last night, but got into foul trouble. He just kind of took away all of his offensive rhythm. Again, missed all of his threes tonight. 0-2 from 3, only took 3 shots. Taking 3 shots in 24 minutes for him is totally not what you want, even with him having 4 fouls. So that's something that they're really going to need for, as long as it takes for them to get out of this rut, because Jaden McDaniels, Rudy Gobert, and Dante DiVincenzo combining for 14 points is not going to cut it.
It ain't going to work. No. Great stuff, man. As always, Wolves drop number 4 in a row. Final score versus the Kings, 115-104. They dropped to 8-10 on the year. Hey, as always, huge shout out to all the everydayers out here that always make us your first listen, and all you guys coming in the chat and venting with us game to game. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Go follow Jack on X at @GRBorman13. He's live from the Target Center during every home game. We got Wolves Clippers. That's Friday night, 6:30 p.m. tip-off. Catch you right here, same time, same place. But until then, have a great Thanksgiving and holiday week. But until then, signing out.